I'm Elaine Reyes, and this is America's Now. Tonight, forgotten lives, stories about Latin America's disappeared and invisible, and the painful search for justice. First up, out of sight in Argentina. Contributing correspondent Joel Richards tells us about the link between automakers Mercedes-Benz and Ford, and a wave of mass kidnappings during Argentina's dictatorship in the 1970s and 80s. Many are still missing, and a new court case may shed light on the dirty war and the factory floor.
Nos sacaron de nuestro puesto de trabajo.
We weren't kidnapped on the street. They took us from our place of work. We were working. We were in our overalls. No sooner was I taken from the factory floor when they started beating me very hard. I said, let me fetch my identification cards. And they said, where you're going, you aren't going to need identification.
And then Colombia's unseen. Correspondent Michelle Beggy reports on something you may not associate with Latin America: racism. She'll tell us how Colombia's African population is living with it, how it first began, and what's being done to stop it.
There's racism on every level, starting with politics. In business, we are not represented. There's racism in all parts of society.
Welcome to the broadcast. It was 1976 when a brutal war began in Argentina under a then-ruling military dictatorship called the country's Dirty War. And during the course of it, an estimated 30,000 people were abducted, many never to be seen again. They became known as the Disappeared. By some accounts, more than half were union workers employed at places like steel mills, shipyards, and car factories. Since then, several companies have been accused of conspiring with the dictatorship and taking part in some of the kidnappings, which usually resulted in torture and often death. Among those companies were auto giants Mercedes-Benz and Ford. A court recently charged 3 former directors at Ford for participating in the alleged crimes. Contributing correspondent Joel Richards in Buenos Aires takes a look at the case. He spoke to some workers who were among the disappeared and survived.
There's one potent symbol from the repression of the dictatorship in Argentina, and it can still be seen on the streets today. The Ford Falcon was the car of choice for the task forces that hunted down the military's targets between 1976 and 1983. For over 35 years, human rights groups have campaigned for justice for crimes committed during the dictatorship. The mothers and grandmothers of the disappeared are recognised around the world for their struggle. And to this day, they march every Thursday at the Plaza de Mayo. The names of the disappeared are etched at the Memory Park in the north of Buenos Aires. It's next to the river in which many bodies were dumped in the infamous death flights, when the military disappeared leftists by drugging them and throwing them from airplanes into the river to drown. But while Argentina has taken huge steps forward with many trials for crimes committed during the dictatorship, there are still many victims of state terrorism awaiting justice. As well as political persecution, labour unions and activists were targeted. Over half of the disappeared were workers. Pedro Troiani, Carlos Propato and Luis de Giusti survived, but they paid a high price for organising at the Ford factory outside Buenos Aires. They sought representation for some 5,000 workers. The delegates had negotiated an excellent deal, including improved working conditions, pay and vacation. But they and 22 other delegates were brutally punished for their efforts.
Porque a nosotros nos sacan de adentro de la fábrica el ejército que estaba instalado dentro de fábrica. El 24 de marzo del 76, el día del golpe, ya ahí empiezan a desaparecer compañeros delegados.
A nosotros nos chuparon en la calle, nos sacaron de nuestro puesto de trabajo, estábamos trabajando con ropa de trabajo.
A mí me sacan el 24 de marzo, me llevan al quincho, todo, y al otro día me mandan un telegrama a mi casa para que me presente dentro de las 48 horas, caso contrario, como si me iban a considerar despedido.
Ni bien me sacaron del piso de pintura, me ataron las manos con la mano y empezaron a dar una paliza atroz. Entonces yo le digo, déjame agarrar los documentos. Dice, no, ¿dónde va? No necesita documentos, me dijo.
Estuvimos detenidos dentro de fábrica y torturados dentro de fábrica. No solamente simulacro de fusilamiento, sino nos golpearon, Propato casi pierde la vida. Le pusieron una capucha plástica y le quitaron el oxígeno y Propato se estaba muriendo. Él siempre comenta en las reuniones que alguno de nosotros lo salvó, porque él pudo romper la bolsa esa de plástico y pudo llegar a respirar.
All three men were illegally detained for another 2 months. They were then transferred to prison, where they spent another year in jail without charge. They're angry with the company for never accepting responsibility for what happened to them because of their union activity. The lawyer for the former delegates is Thomas Ojea. He believes there's no doubt over Ford's involvement in the kidnappings and torture, despite difficulties in bringing the case to court.
Las esposas de los trabajadores, después de que sus maridos habían sido secuestrados, fueron a ver al jefe militar del área, a decirle, ¿qué está pasando? Nuestros maridos son militantes gremiales, no tenían militancia política. ¿Por qué están siendo secuestrados? Y después de mucho insistir, ellas declaran también ante un fiscal y ante un juez que este jefe militar les exhibió una planilla donde estaban los nombres de toda la comisión interna de los delegados gremiales con el logo de Ford y dijo, esto fue pedido a nosotros por parte de la empresa.
Ojea says the company's motive was to increase profits. He points to a speech by the Ford Motors president, Juan María Curad, in 1980, which lays out the company's position regarding the dictatorship. It reads, Ford Motor Argentina believed in the process of national reorganization because it saw the vehicle with which the country would find its true path.
Nuestro objetivo es condenas para que quede claro el mensaje. Los grupos económicos, las empresas comerciales no tienen que utilizar terrorismo de Estado, grupos autoritarios para obtener mayor rentabilidad. Hay que prevenir eso en el futuro.
But the story of the Ford workers is not unique. The families of 14 disappeared employees from the Mercedes-Benz factory, as well as 3 survivors, are awaiting the Supreme Court's verdict, not in Argentina, but in the United States. The case against the Daimler subsidiary has failed to move forward in Buenos Aires, but a civil case was heard in the court in San Francisco in California. After an appeals court ruling, the US Supreme Court will decide in the next session whether the case against Daimler for crimes committed abroad can be heard in the United States. The German investigative reporter Gabi Weber has been pursuing the case of Mercedes-Benz in Argentina since 1999.
Just before dictatorship, the army, it was the best client of Mercedes-Benz for the sale of the Unimog. During '75, there was a very big strike in the factory, and well, there was a movement against the official trade union.
Mercedes-Benz has been in Argentina since 1951. The legendary Formula One driver, Juan Manuel Fangio, became the face of the company and was named honorary president after his retirement from behind the wheel. But despite a roaring trade, the workers at the factory were subjected to terrible conditions and low pay. Their struggle to improve wages and conditions led to a face-off with the company. Eduardo Fachal is a former employee and union delegate at Mercedes-Benz. He remembers when fellow workers started to go missing.
Yo participé de la moción que decía que no debíamos parar porque justamente si parábamos iban a continuar las desapariciones. Nuestra intención era preservar nuestra vida, era casi un instinto de conservación porque pensábamos que si continuábamos con medidas de lucha, bueno, iban a continuar las desapariciones, ¿no?
There was on 4th of January 77, there was a union between the commission, the internal commission, and the managers. And in this union, in this meeting, there was Esteban Reimer and Hugo Ventura. And when they come back home at this night, they said, well, they agreed to everything that we asked for. And well, this same night they were kidnapped and they are disappeared until today.
Reimer and Ventura are 2 of the 14 disappeared Mercedes-Benz workers. But Hector Rato is one of 3 men who survived detention and torture. He witnessed managers at Mercedes-Benz give out the address of colleagues who were then disappeared. He has no doubt that companies in Argentina were part of the repression and as responsible for crimes as the military.
Uno sabe que las listas las hacen las empresas, los militares no te conocen a vos, es imposible que te conozcan, si no es a través de las empresas, tu nombre, a qué te dedicás, a dónde vivís, todos esos datos los sacan de las empresas. Y bueno, de ahí me llevaron ahí a lo que yo reconocí como Campo de Mayo, y bueno, ya llegué, me entraron a pegar, a tirar, tuve un buen rato golpeándome, y después me pusieron En una camilla me desnudaron y me entraron a aplicar corriente eléctrica. O sea, la picana, ¿no? Lo que vulgarmente se conoce como picana. Pues de un buen rato yo sentía que me arrancaban los brazos, entonces me hacen parar y yo me doy cuenta que no puedo mover los brazos. O sea, tenía los brazos totalmente inútiles, tal es así que los tipos mismos me ayudaron a vestirme porque yo no podía hacer nada.
Ratto overcame his injuries, but was illegally detained for another year and a half before being released. But the story does not end with missing workers and torture. Mercedes-Benz donated equipment to the maternity ward at Campo de Mayo, from where many children went missing during the dictatorship. It was one of the military's most atrocious crimes, stealing babies from mothers who were then disappeared. The former head of security at the Mercedes-Benz factory, Ruben Lavagén, was jailed after it was proved he appropriated Paula Luares, the daughter of disappeared parents. And there are 4 other serious allegations of similar cases involving former company employees at Mercedes-Benz. But despite the compelling testimony, the disappeared workers and the appropriation of children proven in a court of law, many close to the case believe that it's difficult for Argentina to put the company on trial.
It's too much to expect here from Argentina to bring such a big company to jail. Please remember, Daimler AG is the biggest industrial company in Europe. So it's too much to ask for this government.
The families of the disappeared Mercedes-Benz workers await news from the Supreme Court later this year. Eduardo Fachal long left the company, and he is now the lawyer who represents the victims and their families. He is optimistic of the outcome.
Para justamente una suerte de reparación integral a la comunidad de González Catán, que es donde está la fábrica, que nos ayudó muchísimo durante los días de huelga, que bueno, que se construya un hospital y que lleve por nombre el nombre de trabajadores de Mercedes-Benz, ¿no? Devolviéndole a la sociedad el mal que la empresa le hizo, ¿no?
Our thanks to Joel Richards in Buenos Aires for that report. Coming up, from Argentina's disappeared to Colombia's invisible. We'll go inside that country's racial divide.
Sports Scene, the heart and soul of sport.
In a business world of information overload, we strip away the complexity and confusion to give you the essence of financial news. Pure value. Biz Asia America. We are CCTV America.
Welcome back. Usually when we think of Latin America, we think of a multicultural continent with a vibrant mix of peoples living in a pleasant state of balance. But what you may be surprised to know is ethnic discrimination exists in South American countries just as much as it does in other nations. One of those countries is Colombia, where the population of African Colombians still experiences discrimination left over from the days of Spanish colonization. In fact, the census in Colombia can't even calculate the actual number of Afro-Colombians because many are too fearful to officially admit their background. But as Michelle Beggy reports from Bogota, just as many others are proud of that heritage. Now they're fighting to change public perception and bring truth to history.
Esteban Copete is a channel to Colombia's deep ancestral reservoir.
Este instrumento se llama marimba de chonta. Si tú lo ves, tiene mucha similitud con un instrumento africano que se llama balafón.
The marimba instrument, one of many examples of Colombia's African ancestry.
El negro fue traído como esclavo tanto a América del Norte como a América del Sur. Y ese negro esclavo en América del Norte hizo blues, hizo jazz, que se convirtió en rock and roll y hoy rock. Pero ese negro que llegó a Cuba, a Puerto Rico, a Cartagena, al Brasil, a Perú, Venezuela, hizo con su tambor primero el son cubano, después la plena y después la salsa.
Every year, Afro-Colombian folklore of the Pacific Coast is celebrated in the music festival Petronio Álvarez. The festival's patron, Petronio Álvarez, was a Colombian musician born in 1914. His passion to spread his African roots in music lives on in his grandson, musician Esteban Copete.
Digamos que soy un enamorado de todo este proceso de la cultura africana, de toda la diáspora musical que se esparció en todo el mundo por la migración de africanos. Entonces en este proyecto tratamos como de reencontrar todos esos ritmos que tienen una misma raíz, pero que han tenido diferentes desarrollos en distintos lugares.
And the city of Cali is one of those places where these ancestors are not only felt and heard, but also seen. 65% of Cali's population is of African descent, making it one of the top 3 cities of Latin America with the most Afro population. But even with studies reporting that as many as 1 in 5 Colombians are of African origin, racism remains.
Y el racismo a todos los niveles, desde que no hay representantes, digamos, en la política, en las empresas, con cargos representativos, ¿no? Que demuestren que hay inclusión, que demuestren de que hay afros en Cali capacitados para hacer de todo tipo de actividades, ¿no? Entonces, a todos los niveles se ven discriminación en esta sociedad.
According to Ray Charrupi, CEO of the organization Chao Racismo, meaning goodbye racism in English, this problem begins with the selective teachings of the education system. Colombians, he says, are taught about white liberators like Simón Bolívar, but never about influential African leaders.
Pero yo sé quién es Simón Bolívar, pero tú no sabes quién es Alejandro Petión. Y Alejandro Petión fue esa persona negra que liberó a Haití y ayudó a Bolívar en 3 ocasiones para que Bolívar lograra liberarnos. Nos ocultaron entonces ese pedazo de la historia negra. Esa es una muestra de la historia de la exclusión en la narración, en la educación, que nos lleva a invisibilizar y a que hoy seamos una sociedad racista. Lo triste es que yo como afrocolombiano sé todo lo de los colombianos, pero tú no sabes lo de los afro.
Colombia has the 3rd largest black population outside of Africa, after the United States and Brazil. But it can be argued that the millions of Afro-Colombians are not accurately represented. The Colombian government is a good example, with not one Afro-Colombian appearing in President Juan Manuel Santos's cabinet.
Santos hizo campaña en todos los lugares donde hay población afro. Cuando llegó el momento, él mismo casi que lo dijo en sus palabras, no, es que no hay un afro capacitado para llegar a ser ministro de este país. ¿Será? Entonces, ¿para qué no fuiste a pedir el voto? O sea, no somos capacitados para gobernar, pero sí somos capacitados para votar.
Costal is a member of the Grammy Award-winning group Choquiptown. This music has brought a lot of attention to the challenges Afro-Colombians have endured, including social exclusion and struggles with poverty.
Sí, Choquiptown es un grupo que gran parte de su música es descriptiva, de sus letras sobre todo, es descriptiva y su sonido es como proponiendo un poco el tema de lo étnico, el tema de lo afrocolombiano, porque el principal elemento de la discriminación en Colombia y en cualquier parte del mundo surge del desconocimiento del otro sobre todo.
Este país se construyó a lomo de mula, y de negro y de indígena. Nosotros construimos este país sin cobrar nada, así dice la canción de Chucky Town. Entonces, por supuesto que Colombia es un país que nosotros entendemos como un país que es conscientemente excluyente, lo que lo lleva a ser inconscientemente racista.
Proof of this is in the picture published in the popular Hola magazine on December of 2011, where 2 Afro-Colombian women were used as props. The caption reads, "The most powerful women of Valle del Cauca in their Hollywood-style mansion."
Lo primero que sentimos cuando vimos esta foto fue un no más. No más, esto se tiene que acabar. Y hoy, cuando 1 año y medio después vuelvo a verla, siento gran satisfacción, porque efectivamente dijimos, o estamos diciendo, chao racismo.
Goodbye Racism was born as a reaction to this controversial spread and has since spoken out against many more acts of racism. Chao Racismo defended Esteban Copete when he became a victim of excessive use of force by a police officer when caught committing a traffic violation.
Pero estamos en una ciudad donde tienen el estereotipo de que el negro es peligroso, yo no sé qué, no sé cuánto, ¿sí me entiende? Entonces, por deducción, yo suponemos que había algo de racismo para que llegaran a abordarnos de esa manera, ¿me entiendes? Me cogieron 5 puntos en el labio. Yo siendo músico, eso es algo muy traumático para mí, músico saxofonista. Entonces se hace la denuncia, Chao Racismo entra a hacer el acompañamiento, un acompañamiento muy fuerte, muy agradecido por ello.
The police issued public apologies, not only to Esteban Copete, but also the Afro-Colombian community in Cali.
4 meses después, la primera capacitación para 120 policías que dijeron chao racismo. En esta capacitación, ellos aprendieron todo el daño que se puede hacer a una persona y a una comunidad afrodescendiente por desconocimiento de su historia, por utilización de términos indebidos.
Colombia has never had legal segregation like in the United States.
Nunca en Colombia ha existido un sitio, establecimiento público que diga no entran negros. Eso no existe en Colombia. Aquí lo que ha existido es, señor, no hay mesa.
While Colombia has never made it public policy to segregate African descendants, the majority are denied access to education and jobs, and their nutritional needs suffer greatly as a result of poverty. The United Nations Development Program has presented studies that show alarming amounts of neglect in Afro-Colombian communities. For example, the Colombian province called Chocó, which is the largest concentration of Afro-Colombians, has a malnutrition rate that doubles the national average. In fact, 70.5% of the population lives in poverty, while the national average is around 40%. The inability to read and write in provinces with large Afro communities is also 3 to 6 times higher than the national average.
Hace 160 años éramos ganado, una mercancía. Y 160 años y un día, después de que abolieron la esclavitud, el negro pasa a ser pobre, porque sale de ser mercancía a no tener nada. Entonces eso determina que hoy la comunidad afro sea mayormente pobre. No, los negros no son menos inteligentes.
After centuries of exclusion and segregation, change will not happen overnight. But both Chao Racismo and Chokip Down are working hard to draw attention to the issue, and they won't stop until they see themselves represented.
Como colombiano, quisiera que el tema de la etnia, no solo por lo afro, sino también con lo indígena y en general los mestizos, viviéramos en un país de verdad.
And through music, artists like Esteban Copete and Chokip Down are striking up a soulful sound that they hope will help bring harmony and healing to Colombia's long and lamentable racial divide.
No solo con los textos estamos diciendo, hay gente afro en Colombia y queremos visibilidad para nuestra gente, que somos nosotros mismos, sino también con nuestro sonido estamos planteando que el hip hop, el funk, la música de elementos latinos y eso, también tiene un criollismo, también tiene un sonido bien identitario, que es con lo que nosotros nos criamos, que es como dice una canción con la que ganamos el Grammy Latino, de donde vengo yo.
That was Michelle Begay reporting from Bogota. There are large populations of Afro-Latinos across the Americas. Besides Colombia, Brazil, Panama, and Ecuador have the largest percentages of Afro-Latinos in their countries, as well as the Caribbean nations of Cuba, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. As you saw in the piece, Afro-Colombians have contributed much to the country's musical heritage. Ironically, however, one of the locations where they have reported discrimination has been at the country's nightclubs. And across the Americas, Afro-Latinos have also complained of feeling racism on public transportation, in housing, the workplace, and sports. Many Afro-Colombians live in a state of serious destitution, deprived of numerous basic human needs. But Colombia isn't alone. Laura Carlson is here now to tell us about other regions in Latin America living in abject poverty, in her view, from the Americas.
The United Nations recently announced that poverty decreased in Latin America in 2012 to the lowest level in the past 3 decades. That's the good news. The media ran with it, hailing an economic comeback and continued growth and investment in the region. Financial institutions used the news to lure investors south. But behind the headlines, there's some not so good news. There are 167 million people living in poverty in Latin America. That's about 29% of the population. And the number of people living in extreme poverty hasn't improved at all. For the 66 million poorest people in the continent, that's bad news. Extreme poverty causes the most human suffering because families are unable to provide even basic needs. Probably the saddest fact of all, though, is that poverty isn't blind. Its victims are carefully selected. Women, indigenous people, the disabled are all overrepresented in the ranks of the poor, and children are especially vulnerable. The report showed that they make up 51% of those living in extreme poverty. In Latin America today, another generation is growing up with hunger and little hope. Central America continues to be the hardest hit. Honduras is the poorest country in the region, with more than 67% of the population living in poverty. Honduras, since the coup, has also become the most violent nation in the hemisphere, which underscores the relationship between poverty, violence, and poor governance. It's followed by Nicaragua and Guatemala, both countries where over half the population lives in poverty. And surprisingly, Mexico, with one of the largest national products in the world, is in the top 10 of poor countries in the region. The reason? The skewed distribution of wealth in that country. Can Latin America continue to reduce poverty? It's not a pipe dream. The region has the resources to support its population. Experts predict solid economic growth of an average 3.8% in 2013. So why do the poor remain? Inequality, not underdevelopment, lurks behind poverty in Latin America. The richest 10% of the population hogs some 32% of the wealth, while the bottom 40% account for only 15%. In many countries, the figures are even more dramatic, with a handful of individuals at the top controlling resources. We know by now that growth without fairness won't do the trick. The solution to inequality and poverty will depend on turning back policies that favor large corporations and financiers. In a region with abundant resources and the worst distribution of wealth in the world, politicians have to start seriously caring about the poor for anything to really change. For Americas Now, I'm Laura Carlson.
That brings us to the conclusion of our broadcast this week. You can find us on the web at cctv-america.com, and you can also find us on Facebook at cctvamerica.com. Please join us again next week for another edition of Americas Now. See you then.